May the 3rd was a bit of a lull, I presume, whilst the Argentines regrouped and maybe the UK task force regrouped to think what they were going to do next. And the following day, May the 4th, was the attack on Sheffield. The day of the attack on Sheffield, the 4th of May, had started. I was on watch in the forenoon from 8 a.m. till midday, and then the port watch went off at midday, and the starboard watch took over. And then because you just watch on, watch off for 24 hours, we had something to eat, we cleaned up, and went to the mess to rest. I didn't know anything about the attack on Sheffield until minutes before it happened. The compartment I was in, directly forward of that, was the Sea Dart missile space, the Sea Dart missile magazine. And I heard the Sea Dart hydraulics start, which is taking missiles up to the launchers. And I thought, why are the Sea Dart hydraulics starting? And within seconds after that, there was this whoosh, and then this catastrophic explosion. And the door just exploded and blew in, and all of the cabinets around the mess, the doors blew off, everything shattered. It was, and there was a huge shaking. The ship heeled, I thought very, very heavily. Some people say not so heavily, but I honestly thought it had gone over a long way, but obviously it righted itself. And then within seconds, I was blown right across the space. And by the time I'd stood up, thick black smoke was flooding into the compartment. And this is seconds, not long, seconds. And I went out into the passageway on the starboard side, and there's a very big watertight hatch which had been closed, but just with 2 clips for defence watches, and it had been blown open, and it was embedded into the bulkhead and bent out of shape. And there was no way you could get that door pulled out of the bulkhead and closed to stop the fire and smoke spreading. My action station was at the aft end of the ship on the 3-inch rocket deck, which I knew I had to get to. And so I ran past the operations room, and then the smoke was just getting thicker. And the next flat was the communications office, and I couldn't get any further because the smoke was so. And I'd started to choke. And through our firefighting training, while we were in HMS Raleigh, we were always told, if you're ever in a fire, you get on the floor because the first 12 inches are clear of smoke. So I did, but in a fire with such thick toxic smoke, the first 12 inches aren't clear at all. It goes all the way to the floor, and you can't breathe, and you just start to choke. When I was laid on the floor, hardly being able to breathe, my thoughts were, I have to get out. But I thought I can't go any further aft because of the fire and the smoke there. And I thought if I get up, I'm just going to breathe in more smoke and I'll asphyxiate or suffocate. And while I was laid on the floor, my thoughts were, is it going to be better to choke to death? Because I didn't know whether we'd been torpedoed and we were going to sink straight away. Or is it better to drown in a sinking destroyer? And then I thought, because I was only 17, I've been sent to my death by a government I'm not old enough to vote for. I just thought it was a strange thought to have. So I made my way forward, and on a Type 42 there's a cross passage at Echo section, and I got to the cross passage and I went across to the port side to try and see if we'd get out of an escape hatch down the port side. And in the corner of the port passage and the cross passage, there's a 2-man chief's cabin where the chief boatswain's mate, the buffer, lives with another chief. And when I looked in there, there was a man laid on the floor in there. I thought it was the buffer, but it wasn't. And he was covered in blood. He was black and red and shiny, and there was blood all over the cabin. And it looked to me like his overalls or his uniform had been cut into neat inch-wide strips, like the streamers you used to see on a maypole. But it wasn't his uniform, it was his skin. And he'd been in the engine room where the missile had hit. How he got out was a miracle, and he's still alive now. And all his blood was smeared all down the passageway where he'd crawled up from the engine room. And we couldn't get further aft on the port side because of the fire and the smoke, so everybody turned around and started to go up to the very forward end of the ship, and there's an escape hatch that comes out under the 4.5-inch gun. So we all climbed up there. We were wearing life jackets and respirators, and nobody knew in the Navy that you couldn't get out of an escape hatch whilst wearing these until we tried to do it. And so I finally got out, and then I actually got on the upper deck then and finally breathed some clean air.